Bonjour, Danimaganaduk, Miigwech Kibijaik. My name is Jim Compton, and I'll be your MC for this media conference today. And this conference is called by the Interlake Reserves Tribal Council, Inc. And the issue is Jordan's Principle. And the IRTC chiefs are asking the federal government to deliver on the promises they made in relation to Jordan's Principle, and in particular to First Nations children and families. So, but before we get into the press conference, we want to start this off in our traditional way, and I'm going to ask Chief Latender, to say an opening prayer for us. So if you can all rise, please.
Thank you, Lord, for today. We ask you, Lord, that you would give us the guidance, the wisdom and knowledge to proceed with what is to be said today, that our families would no longer be left on the side, but Lord, let us be the voices needed for the children that have been neglected for way too long. We ask you, Lord, that you would open the ears to the listeners. We thank you, Lord, for everything. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Chief. And to give us the particulars of this intention to file a judicial review in court with the government, I'm going to introduce you to Carl Zednick, who is the Executive Director of the Interlake Reserves Tribal Council.
Thank you, everyone, media, our chiefs, and Jim for emceeing. Today is a critical moment for us as a tribal council. We've been in good faith discussions back in 2014, even before that 2017, when Jordan's Principle first started as a program funding model to meet the CHRT 41 court orders of children with disability and mentally handicapped needs. And so with IRTC helping with the First Nation communities of the Interlake Reserves Tribal Council and meeting those funding needs and requests, the government of Canada has failed us. They've failed us to negotiate in good faith. We were promised over $15 million back in 2024-25 fiscal funding to earmark for these disadvantaged and children with disabilities. We're talking about the most vulnerable families, most vulnerable kids that are in need. And so we're shortfalled of almost over $5.3 million of that promised funding. So we deliver critical services to the children and family through Jordan's Principle, like lunch program fees for children who otherwise go hungry. We provide rent, food, like I said earlier, land-based healing, also with some sporting initiatives and mental health and disability services to not only look after these children and ensure they're fed, but also to transport them, for those that are in need. Our most vulnerable families depend on these services to care for their children. And so Canada had promised to pay, but hasn't provided the funding. Last year, Canada promised to give IRTC almost $15 million for those services. A year later, Canada still hasn't paid more than 1/3 of what it promised, more than $5 million, as I shared earlier. So because of these broken promises, we can't deliver the services our families need to survive. We have had to cut services, we've had to cut staff. We have a backlog of over 400 families in need to date. And so we've tried to work cooperatively with Canada, but the situation is urgent. We have no choice but to go to court if they do not respond by tomorrow. And we've asked Canada to give us a final response. If we don't get a response, we will file this court action next week. Canada still has time to do the right thing. Miigwech.
Thank you, Carl. I'm going to ask Chief Cornell McLean from Lake Manitoba First Nation to give us his perspective on what these cuts mean to his community.
Well, good afternoon, media, staff, chiefs. I just wanted to, bring my concerns forward, and foremost of the discrimination against our children from the government of Canada. Like, how many orders do they have to get from the courts to finally do the right thing, because they've lost numerous cases over the months. And just recently they lost a court case to a family in Ontario where they were told to provide adequate housing repairs. And now they're going to spend money to appeal against this family, which is, I think, is wrong, that they should just do the renovations and help this family out. But first and foremost, I guess, for the Tribal Council and for our communities is that, we were set up for failure right from the get-go from Health Canada, Jordan's Principal Program, Joe Gashero. He said yes to everything, and then, now all of a sudden we're under a financial review by the government of Canada just to adhere to what our spending was. And, it wasn't only my nation, it was nations right across the board. I think, our families are suffering right now because of that dependency that was brought upon us, that sometimes we can't contribute to the needs of our families anymore because we just don't have the resources because they've been taken away from us. I got to commend, the IRTC director for keeping the boat afloat in the Jordan's Principal Program with the limited amount of financial resources that's been given to us. We started off the year with 500,000, and we were told to have X and X employees, and to date we've been able to maintain the employees that we have. And I call on Health Canada numerous times to find out where the funding's at, and I understand other communities are resubmitting because their asks are not being met by the government, and enough is enough. We've had enough as a tribal council, and that, especially for my community. I'd like to see us get what we deserve for our children, our families, because at the end of the day, there's only so many pots of money that we can take from to keep our communities afloat. So those are my comments. Miigwech.
Thank you, Cornell. I'm going to ask Chief Lawrence Latander, Dauphin River, to say a few words.
Miigwech, thank you. I'd like to thank IRTC for setting this up here. I do want to read something off of my notes here. Canada has not met the Jordan's Principal human rights obligations. They are not addressing the backlog. Children have been waiting to have their needs met. The backlog is due to ISK's lack of quality control and using Jordan's Principal to cover other underfunded program areas such as NIHB and poverty supports. This backlog has grown over 140,000 requests. Individual requests are about 116,000 requests, representing about 45 million, which is about $388 per request. ISK does not have a triage or case management mechanism in place to receive requests. Relying on first come, first serve, that leaves children with high need and urgent needs waiting. Children with chronic needs should not be subject to re-request process. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Chief Tony Travers from Kinoshtigan First Nation, say a few words.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank the Interlake Reserves Tribal Council for hosting this. I've got a few comments I've got to say about in regards to the Jordan's Principal program that has been currently underfunded through ISK. We are currently in a no-win situation with the regards to our children that are in the city. We can't fund the off-reserve membership, and that's what we depended on the Interlake Reserves Tribal Council for. So we're kind of stuck in a no-win situation. I'd like to thank Carl and the IRTC staff for continuing on with the Jordan's Principal program and the funding of that's was promised to IRTC through the Jordan's Principal funding is needed now, not tomorrow. And these backlogs of cases that are being overlooked. So that's the purpose of having our local Jordan's Principle program through IRTC. That's the basis of this lawsuit is the promised funding that was allocated to the Tribal Council. So that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And last but not least, we have Chief Curvis Anderson from Mutang First Nation, sorry. He's going to say a fefew words.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for IRTC for hosting this event. As we hold this event, unfortunately, it's something that we shouldn't have to do. Fighting a fight we shouldn't have to fight. This fight has been fought already many years, and for a long time this fight's gone on. And here we are, even after all the decisions have been made, orders have been given, we're still having to fight for our children here. Many of our children today are they're in pre-JP program positions, where the care they're receiving, which is very minimal, and so for many in my community, non-existent. Like what's happening with Canada as they fight our children over and over again. Losing these fights, by the way, but they continue. Are they waiting for us to get tired of fighting or run out of money? We don't have the kind of funding, the kind of resources they have. Possibly $100 million a year they invest into fighting First Nations. And we don't have those kind of funds to do that kind of fight. But I support this again. I still support this fight with trying to get these services to our children. Mutang, our health center has always been leaned on. It's been leaned on quite often by JP program to provide things that they didn't know how to put together. And we've always been there to accommodate. On first request, we accommodate. With the other way around, we have 4 submissions now, trying to get the accommodation that we provide, trying to get that same accommodation from the department. 4 submissions being denied, giving a little out of time, being given to us in pieces. None of our programs on the First Nations have adequate funding to fight these we don't have extra funding and extra time and extra human resources to fight these fights. In Mutang, we have our health director, our nurses, and our JP program manager investing hundreds of hours this past few months trying to meet these daily changes to the requirements we're submitting. And I can see in my staff that this has a mental health impact of our staff. And I'm sure the same goes through all the First Nations and all the offices, including Tribal Council. Just when you think you're getting there, the goalpost gets moved on you. I can imagine the impact I must have on a person mentally, and all the work and all the thought that's put into that kind of work, and just to have it moved on you daily. Is there any consideration from the department what they're doing to our people, and not only our children, but to our staff? We have other programs that need our staff, other health areas that are waiting for some time from our staff, and it's not fighting JP is taking a lot of that time. And again, with the fight that they fight, they have multiple cases going on that they continue to lose. We have the Paulus and the Cully, and now this one here, that's probably going to be another fight from IRTC. Another fight that they'll lose. When they lose these fights, what do? They just deny, they just fight by the appeal, fighting against our children. So something has to give here. If our children shouldn't be living as if JP never existed. And that's how some of our students in the schools too. Our children are being failed by inadequate supports for staff. We have very high needs children in school, many with autism and very high needs. And because of the lack of the program, we don't have certified or trained staff to look after these children. You just take a person, whoever is willing to step up without the training. And I don't think that would be allowed anywhere else. It kind of it just puts someone there without any training, but it sure is accommodates, sure is okay for us to use that kind of staff member to look after our children. Again, in comparison, and I'd like to use that comparison of how are we different from the rest of society, or the other office and their offices also. When we meet with the Manitoba region on Jordan's principle, it just becomes clear they don't know what they're doing for our children. They don't know what to do. They don't know the frontline needs of our children. And they make it clear to us that the goalposts are being moved on them too, with their higher-ups making calls without any input from the communities. I think I start to see the pattern here is decisions are being made by people that have no idea what our children need on the front line in the day-to-day life. They have no idea what's needed there, but they continue to make decisions like they do. And again, with our staff, getting back to the mental health. In Penimutang, we have a case manager. Our files are about 600, and one staff member looking after that, and looking after their staff. When I asked the Jordan's Principal Program if there is anything, if they have any ratio near that 600 to 1 in the staffing, looking after files, they didn't want to tell me. I don't think it's because they didn't know. It's because they don't want to admit there is no 600 to 1 ratio in their office to people looking after their files. But they seem to think it's acceptable to happen to our staff and our communities. So this is what I'm talking about. We see a lot of these reasons why our children are not getting these services. The lack of funding and lack of resources for our staff. How can you, even with the funding, how can you expect one staff member to be leading a group looking after 600 files? How many staff would it take at risk to look after 600 files? So once again, I say it's unfortunate that we have to fight this fight. It's a fight that I'd rather not fight because it's like round 1, round 2, round 3 in the same match. I'll say, put it that way. It is getting frustrating as a leader, and I stand with the IRTC. I stand with our staff there and our staff in all the communities. They're very patient. They're under a lot of mental health stress. And we need an answer here for our children, for our staff and our communities. And we need it today, as the director says. We're running out of time. It's about time we start setting deadlines, as our staff are always expected to meet deadlines on a daily basis. I think so. I agree with the director setting a deadline for an answer and a response on what we're doing here today. With that, Miigwech.
I'm just going to summarize a little bit, if I can, that we are in the Interlake Reserves are in dire straits in relation to Jordan's Principle, and I know that just for the people that are out there, that a lot of the questions are where are the negotiations at this point? And I'm just going to turn that back over to Carl. Where the negotiations are, who we're dealing with. I know we had talked about the minister. So where is everything at?
Yeah, so we've submitted everything they've wanted in terms of, general ledgers, financial reporting, and so forth. But every time that we've sent them information and what they've required, they've set new benchmarks or new moving goalposts, right? And so we were getting fed up with that because it was clearly defined that they had no clear process or protocol to, measure this program or to ensure that, obligations were not only met, but more importantly, just the requirements. There was no guidelines, there was no requirements, right? And then they created a set, and then the set became very bureaucratic, burdensome, right? And so to have one staff look after 600 files, or even 5 staff, that's unheard of. Normally in a case and manager position, you have 25 files max, right? Some of my CFS staff have been overworked, and not only that, it makes them look bad because they can't offer the supports they once provided. And so when you look at the government, creating not only just the bureaucracy, but create more red tape to get funding out the door, it really puts the families at a very vulnerable position, because who do they turn to for these resources, right? When rent and hydro's getting forced to be cut off, and the family's being forced to be put on the street, or in a housing situation where it's negligent, what do you do? And so a lot of these policies and procedures were created by ISK, but at the end of the day, I don't think they finally took the time to really think them through before creating a program that was once had none, that now has some, but now it's made its difficulty in terms of reaching the vulnerable family.
So are there any questions, comments that we need to say at this point? I would think that there would be a coordinated effort with some of the PTOs and also the national organizations.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. All right. So, any last words, Carl? Chiefs, Cornell, go ahead.
Good afternoon. I sit on the AMC Jordan's Principle Committee, and most times we speak about, the mandate of Jordan's Principle. What was the purpose of this program, and speaking with the family, and trying to find out, what did we do wrong as nations, and what could we do better. It's obvious that the CHRT 41 ruling was there's not to be any policies to be put in place. I've read the ruling over and over and over to see, well, where did the government go wrong? When the judicial review was asked, when we asked IRTC to do one for us, it was based on the minister's decision. How did she come to that conclusion to change back to basics to what it is today? She couldn't even answer that question. She wouldn't meet with us in Ottawa, and all of a sudden she was ghosting us. It was Minister Patty Haidu. I met the new minister, and my flat-out question was to her, when does funding return to Jordan's Principle? When do the kids get their money that they're entitled to? She said, well, I'm 110 days in. I can't give you an answer because I don't know what the government's budget is. Still today, we don't know what the government's budget is. We don't know what's Carney's platform, in terms of how do we move forward here? How do, First Nations be looked after? Because it's obvious that's what, society thinks, that we're being looked after by somebody when it's not. Give us a piece of the natural resources and let us take care of ourselves. That's my, that's my answer to we don't need to live off anybody. We can take care of our own, because we're, according to, sources, we're the richest people in the world here. We own Canada. So, give us a piece of the resources. We'll take care of ourselves. We won't have to worry about going to talk to any minister or anything or anybody about money for our kids. Thank you.
Just in closing, as per the press release, the government's failing to protect our children. We are fiduciary obligations and a fiduciary duty in the best interests of those First Nations children. They understood they had a responsibility to deliver this funding in a timely manner, which would have met the needs of our children and our community's children, but they're still failing to match these words with action. In closing, the government has till tomorrow to respond. After that date, the court action judicial review will be filed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chiefs. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, audience. On behalf of myself, I think it's very important that, the leaders of the day step up to the plate. And so it's heartening to see that these chiefs are not letting this go away, that they're keeping it in the forefront. And I think that the more that we take the government to task, the better it will be for not only the IRTC children, but the children in Manitoba and the children right across the country. So with that, I say miigwech, guamin. We'll see you again.